What is Nomad's motivation? A legitimate question. Why is Nomad performing a heist? Why did the Nomad leave the backers and come to Night City? But it's not relevant. Why is it not relevant? How about, instead of Nomad V not having motivations for leaving the backers, I think we do actually find out later on he left because they got gobbled up by Snake Nation. Which is, God, it's such a simplification of what could have been legitimate character motivation. V has a conversation with Jackie, or V has a conversation with someone who he doesn't really know that well. T-Bug. T-Bug's like, why are you doing all this? Corpo V can say, I'm doing this to get back the wealth that I lost. I want to be someone again. Or Corpo V could perhaps say, I'm doing this to get back at Arasaka. I gave them my everything and they treated me like trash. So in turn, I'm going to do the same to them. Well, now all of a sudden, you have two entirely different reasons why V is pulling the heist. And as a result, you can have two entirely different conclusions to those arcs. For instance, let's, I have this written down somewhere, believe it or not. Yeah, here we go. Nomad V, this is what I was getting at. Nomad V leaves the backers, doesn't have a family anymore. Had to leave that family due to principles and morals. Who's the first person they meet? Who's kind of like accepting of them? Jackie Wells. V meets Jackie Wells and Jackie's like, hey man, listen, you can stay here while you get yourself sorted. No big deal. So, who is V's new family? Jackie Wells. And while Nomad V may necessarily not aspire to achieve the same level of fame and success Jackie does, he does it out of an obligation to someone who is essentially a brother to him. And as a result of that blind loyalty, not only to Jackie, but to Dexter Deshawn, to Evelyn Parker, V gets killed. Because in Night City, there ain't no room for that shit. And then, once you have the conclusion to that, because V is blindly loyal, V gets betrayed, then you can begin Act 2, where then you start putting into question, like, is it worth still being Nomad? Is it worth being loyal, honest? Is it worth dying for? I already died once. I have this second chance at life. Is it worth dying for again? None of that's in the game. None of what I just said is in the game. You have a fucking perfect story of a Nomad that you can carry all throughout the game. And you can let the players inform the decisions. Is that worth remaining a Nomad? I did this happened to me. Is it worth remaining true to myself, or is it worth changing and adapting to Night City? Well, now you have a branch towards two of the different endings. You can adapt to Night City and become the Night City legend that Jackie sought out to be, or you can decide, this is too much of who I am. I do not want to lose who I am. I'm already losing who I am because of Johnny. I want to keep what's left of me. I'm going to get the fuck out of here and go back to a place that accepts me for who I am. Now you have the Nomad ending with Pan Am. You have two different endings that are consistently reinforced with the life path. It can't be too hard to have V side with Arasaka as well. Maybe draw from Snake Nation. Maybe have V come into like, maybe they did the right thing siding with the Corpos because they could have fizzled out into nothingness, but now they're thriving better than ever. Do I want to fizzle out into nothingness? Or do I want to live? Do I want to live? Do I want to thrive? Is it worth betraying who I am just like they did? All of this sounds really compelling, right? None of it's in the game. This is my issue with Cyberpunk. They can have both a blank slate character and a pre-written character. They didn't do a good job of it. And this is probably the hardest one to, actually, no, I don't even want to say this is the hardest one to master. Actually, yeah, I'd say it would be. Because you have to establish multiple character arcs for the player to go on that begin from beginning to end. Whereas if you have a blank slate character, you could just be like, fuck it, you can pick whatever, go do your own thing. And if you have a pre-written character, you can be like, we have one story we want to tell you. You can change how that story goes out, but you're going to be who we want you to be. To ride that fine line in the middle, and I know because I've written branching stories before, and it's fucking hard as shit. There's a reason why I say written past tense. I gave up on it. I know how hard it is. And I'm sure it's much harder if you have a bunch of different people writing a bunch of different quests. What you have to do is make each path equally rewarding. If I go Street Kid, I need to be satisfied with this character from beginning to end. I need the world to treat me as if I am the Street Kid. If I pick Nomad, I want people to know me as the Nomad, as the guy who left Snake Nation, or left the backers, and went to do his own thing. The guy who died, got killed and betrayed because of his blind loyalty to not only a guy he doesn't know, but a guy he only knew for 6 months as well. That's how desperate he was for a family, and he got killed because of it. Or a Corpo, who had it all, was the best of the best. But because they were in the system, they got played by the system. They had everything, and then they had nothing. Do they want to fight tooth and nail to gain that wealth back? Do they want to try and rejoin the system? Or do they just want to say, fuck it. Fuck the system. Fuck this city. I'm out of here. These are all questions that are never answered in the story because they don't account for these long, persistent character arcs that V can go on. And they do a good job with the themes. They do a good job of setting up the endings. The quality of the overall story is not determined by the greatest aspects of it. It is determined by the overall story. And no matter how satisfying the endings may be, even though I'd argue they're not, especially the fucking Path to Glory ending, Jesus Christ. What you need to do is remain consistent. You need to have a beginning, a middle, an end. You need to have a consistent theme. You need to have characters who don't flip-flop. That includes the protagonist, by the way. If you want to have the protagonist say some shit without player input, you need to at least make sure that what that character's saying is not completely contradictory to what the player inputted in the past. There needs to be more scenes where the player is allowed to express themselves and just pull back for a second and define their character's motivations. Establish these motivations and then create through that an actual character arc that the player can go on. It's so ironic that the entire theme of the story is not losing oneself. Well, there's multiple themes, but one of the themes is not losing oneself. And I find it so fucking funny. Like, I don't want to forget who I am. Am I gonna think the same tomorrow? Meanwhile, we've had 0 characterizing moments for V. How am I gonna know you're losing who you are? I don't know who you are. And that's what I'm trying to do with these videos. I'm trying to give V some sort of a fucking character arc. And I'm already failing, but I want a protagonist I can actually relate to. One way or another. If it's not a protagonist that you've written for me that I can relate to, have it be a protagonist that I, myself, can create and extrapolate whatever I want onto that character. Consistency. I mean, consistency is the name of the game with it, really. And I think they have absolutely failed on that front. And I hope they do better.